Okay, new year, new me. My first airfix video is crap. I didn't build the kit well, and I'd like to think I've improved since then, so as a more experienced modeler, I'm going to go back to basics and build some classic airfix kits again. And first up, of course, is a Spitfire. As a somewhat accomplished model maker at this point, I'm going to go for a bit more of a tutorial-y format for this video, with a camera angle that actually allows you to see what I'm building sometimes, and some useful tips along the way. I'll try to make it easy to digest for beginners, but include some extra techniques, materials and tools which could help to make your kit easy to build and better looking once it's done. With any luck, I might be able to help your first kit look less like this, and more like this. But without any further ado, let's get on with the video. A Supermarine Spitfire. Here we go, from Airfix. Now, this kit comes with a couple of things. It comes with a set of decals, an instruction booklet, and these sprues of parts. And I'm going to aim to make this as simple as possible. I won't use too many tools. All you really need is... no, by the way, I should address... this is a slightly more complicated version of the kit. There's a starter set which has less decals, but it's basically the same kit otherwise. This one has some stencils and more complicated decals. But fundamentally they are the same. They use the same tooling. It was tooled in 2010, so it's about a 14-year-old kit at this point, but it should be totally fine. There is a paint scheme on the back of the box, and it lists all the different paints that you need. You will most likely need silver, number 11, number 24, matte trainer yellow, number 29, matte dark earth, number 30, matte dark green, number 33, matte black, number 34, white, and number 53, gunmetal. However, if you want to add a little bit more detail to your kit... Hello. Just recording a video. Oh. Sorry about that, my uncle came into the room. There we go. To add a little bit more detail in it, you will need some number 78 interior green, and also some transparent paints from Vallejo model colour, number 70.936 and 70.934. However, these are not strictly necessary for building the kit. On the simpler version of this kit, these 4 paints will probably come as standard. These are slightly more advanced, and these are slightly more advanced after that. But these are really all the paints you'll need. I'll just shove them over there. With regards to tools, really all you should need for this entire kit is a razor blade or craft knife of some description, or a scalpel potentially. And on some kits it will come with an included brush. This is a size 2 one, it's become a bit frayed, but I've actually got 2 of those just in case. And also 1 or 2 larger brushes might be useful if you have any of those lying around. I've also got a smaller brush and a little bit of a toothpick. And those are really all the tools that you'll need. However, some people want to have their experience enhanced slightly, so some other useful tools include cotton buds or Q-tips, a couple of these files, some sandpaper, some sanding sticks, some more sandpaper, and a pot for mixing paint in. I've found these very useful over the years. Well, yeah, I've been making these kits for about 1 year. And also some masking tape, because that can hold bits together. For these kits, you will often need glue, and if you've got the starter kit version, it should have come with a 5ml tube of Humbrol polycement. This is a type of solution, sort of a bit of acetone in it, and basically it melts the plastic parts, and when you push them together they will essentially be melted together, so when the glue sets, these all have been bound together. Very interesting stuff. However, to enhance your experience, you can get some other types of solution. Here's a slightly bigger bit of poly cement from quite an old kit. It's 20 years old, but it worked fine for me. Some contactor or precision poly. This one's from Revel, but other brands do make it. And this allows you, and this has an applicator nozzle, which allows you to place glue more precisely. And those are all very useful. And a couple of other things. There's also liquid poly. There's also a version sold by Tamiya, which is better for this. It's a bit runnier, and that allows for you to place things on large surfaces. It has a little brush on it. It also allows for the use of capillary action to get the glue into smaller places. This is often a bit more gloopy. And a couple more essentials would be clear fix for clear parts, because polycement will fog up clear parts. Some decal fix, that's useful for setting decals, and something I just acquired, masking fluid. That allows you to essentially substitute masking tape for bits like the canopy which you don't want to paint. You can also use some super glue, potentially, or PVA to clean these parts. Another useful tool would be plastic putty. There is also model filler, which is similar in nature. This allows you to fill gaps between the panels, and you can wipe it off before it's dried, or you can sand it down, and that allows you to get rid of panel lines from gluing parts together, and gaps between the panels when you fit them. Moving on to extra tools to enhance your model once it's done. Weathering powder, that's good for weathering your kit. Sketching pencils, this allows you to do a bit of a post-shading, pre-shading technique without using an airbrush, which is a complicated tool which I won't go into here. Here's another pencil, I stole that from school. And if you're going to be using those powders, you won't be able to use normal varnish, otherwise you'll smudge them. So what you'll need is some acrylic varnish, and that allows you to seal in all of your decals on your weathering without having to brush the varnish on. You shake for 30 seconds and basically apply it like a normal spray can. It also protects the model from erosion or something. I've also got some bubbles. These aren't necessary at all. I just like bubbles. You also might want a pipette for squeezing paint and water in. Now, these are complicated, and you might be slightly intimidated looking at all of these parts and being like, I really need all these? Well, good news, you don't. I can't snap my fingers. Because at the end of the day, these are the only tools you'll need for the entire model. On this board here, these are all you'll need. I will be adding some more complex techniques into this build to help you enhance it, but for the most part, you do not need to take it any further than here. Pretty much all of what I'm going to do is achievable with just this. So without any further ado, let's get on with the build.
First, I painted the small parts on the sprue, as this is less fiddly than having to hold them whilst attached. Another reason why you shouldn't make haste to cut out the parts is that they can get lost really easily, as was the case with its kit's propeller piece. It vanished into thin air, meaning I could not install it and had to email Airfix's spare parts service for a new one, and wouldn't you know, they actually supplied it! And with that, I was finally able to complete my kit. Oh, look at that. That's what it's going to look like when it's complete.
I lost that part as well. Yeah, Oh god, I fucking hate myself.
So, what have I done? Well, I've painted the figure here. Oh, it's still a bit wet. Oops. He's painted with brown. I believe his flight jumpsuit was actually blue. I don't have any blue, so I'm using brown. He's got a yellow life jacket on him, and I didn't have any flesh tone paint, so I used some yellow and mixed that with some white to create slightly more skin tone colour. And I also painted his goggles with a bit of black as well. So that's the pilot. The interior has been painted with cockpit green here, however in the back section I've actually painted it with silver because, I mean, you're not going to see it, but trust me, it is there. I've also painted the internals here. I painted a bit of the number 29 onto the back to simulate, I think that's either leather or wood on the back. I've also painted some more things like the landing struts and the wheels, you know, just sort of getting preliminary bits done. I've also painted these gas tanks in silver, and these are in gunmetal. I've also painted the inside of the wings in silver as well. So when we stick those together, I don't have to paint them once they're inside. So that's all of the sort of preliminary painting that you need to do. I've also painted the inside of these parts here because they might be harder to get to once everything is stuck together. You should do all these first because a lot of these will be sort of hidden inside once you've built the kit.
With all the small parts and hard to access once built areas painted, I can begin construction of the model.
So just referencing the instructions here. Step 1. Okay, so first we take these two parts and quite nicely they just slot into together. Parents, if you're watching, you might want to supervise your kids whilst they try to do that, but hopefully they won't have a precision nozzle at this point. That's more a bit for professionals. Also in this step we need to join, so there's a little nugget here which indicates the direction that it needs to go, and there's a little thing which we have to slot in here. So we'll put a bit of poly cement on the end of this. Tell you what, let's use some of the normal stuff instead. Oh, that's a bit pricked up, so I'll just open up this. And there you go. You have a control stick. Now you may notice we have a bit of a problem here. If we put these two parts together, they don't quite go together because this guy's legs, his feet are blocking me from attaching the two parts together. So unfortunately what you have to do in scenarios like this is amputation. Now, I'm sure he's in incredible agony from me doing that, but now, he's probably in incredible agony, but at least he fits in the cockpit now. So there's some attachment points here. It should just slot in pretty nicely. There's the Spitfire sort of cockpit section. Hold on. I've got a bit of my finger there. What we can do now is we can actually stick this in. Might be a bit sloppy looking, but we won't see very much of it. And yeah. So we'll just leave that set for a little bit now.
All the parts went together very well and there were not too many egregious panel gaps to fill in. To smooth out the seam lines on the fuselage, I laid down some perfect plastic putty, yes that's the name, I know it's stupid, and after waiting 20 minutes I sanded it down to create a smoother seam. It's still noticeable in some areas, but in other areas it looks really great. I abstained from attaching small parts like the pitot tube and antenna, so they were not at risk of getting damaged during painting. Having masked off the canopy, I was ready to move on to painting the rest of the kit. Paintwork on this does involve quite a lot of patience, at least for me. I first had to contend with the underside of the plane, which involves 3 colours: black, white and silver. I laid down a base of black for the silver to stick to, but in retrospect I think a grey paint or primer would have been a better choice, as it took more coats to cover up the black this way. I masked off one half and painted the other, then painted the other half of the wing. I attempted to use the white paint that came in the box, but as I had anticipated it did not go down onto the model very well. I have found white paints often contain large clumps of pigment and overall have terrible coverage, so I switched from Humbrol number 34 matte white to number 130 satin white, which went down marginally better. Another problem with most light paints, and especially white, is that they are massive dust and lint magnets, so tons of tiny annoying threads kept ruining the finish. Airbrushing on the white would be easier, but that's a bit out of the league of beginner, so you're stuck with normal paintbrushes. Sorry. I touched up some areas in the middle before adding on one of the intakes I hadn't attached yet, then moved on to the silver. This went down well, albeit needing quite a few coats. The big frustration came when I realised that I had painted over a section of masking tape instead of the model, which meant I had to sand down the area leading into the bit that I'd missed and repaint it. Thankfully it doesn't show up too much when the model's finished. Moving to the top side, I masked around the underside to minimise paint bleed and began painting on number 29 Dark Earth. This only took a few coats, it was a darker paint, and that allowed me to then freehand the camouflage using the paint diagrams on the back of the box as reference. I used a finer brush for this, going around the edges of the section before filling in the middle. I didn't thin the paint as much for this bit, so it did leave some brush strokes, but I later went over these with some thin layers to smooth them out. I then spent quite some time touching up any paint bleed I could find, unfortunately not all, before sealing in the paintwork with Humbrol satin acrylic varnish. Rattle the can for about 30 seconds before applying in strokes across the mold so it doesn't pool. You don't need to use the spray varnish at this point, but it's what I chose to use. You could use Humbrol clear or an acrylic varnish pot instead. Stuff would like to note that you should not be doing this step inside. Do it outside, and if you can, wear a spraying mask to filter out the fumes. Stuff is an idiot. Don't varnish your models like Stuff. The satin coat should allow for a better surface to apply decals to, as it will minimise silvering of the backing film. This came with a more advanced decal scheme with many small stencils to apply, but the starter set version does away with these and only includes at the most about 10 decals, which are all large and easy to apply. They are printed by Cartograph and are of very high quality. If you're feeling confident, you could try doing all of these in one go, but when you have this many you really shouldn't. I applied the stencils first, though some really should be applied after the main decals, and this involved dunking the section of the decal sheet with the required decals in some warm water. These are not stickers. What happens is that the water reactivates the adhesive on the sheet, allowing the decals to slide off of it. Wet the area you want to apply the decals to with some water or potentially a setting solution such as decal fix if you have any, before sliding the decal onto your brush from the sheet or directly onto the model. The water should make it easier to move, and you can now align it with the position shown on the box, which often quite helpfully align with some of the panel lines on the model. Decal fix can help soften them into the panel lines, making them look more painted on, which can make the model look more realistic. If you don't have it though, you could score the panel lines into the decals with a craft knife or fine toothpick potentially. Once all the decals are down, seal them in with another coat or two of varnish.
This stuff is delicious.
In order to bring out the detail in the panel lines, you can apply a panel line wash which goes into the gaps and brings them out.
There are panel lines here, if you look a bit closer, but you don't really see them. So what we can do is we're going to use some paint. This is enamel paint, Revel number 7, and if we thin this down with some enamel thinners, or in this case white spirit, then
Stuff would like to interject and say under no circumstances should you be using enamel thinners for this. I'll explain some other time, but for now just stick to white spirit, okay? It's less strong, it'll be less likely to cause an adverse reaction with the acrylic paint.
we can create a wash that will go into the panel lines. So if we open up this white spirit bottle, we can take a pipette and let's put 2 drops in for now, and just get a little bit of the enamel paint, and then now, still not quite runny enough, so we'll add 1 or maybe even 2 more drops in, and at this point it seems pretty runny. And now it should work perfectly. However, I'm just going to apply it to some small sections first, so I know it's safe. There we go. As you can see, it runs right into the panel lines through a process known as capillary action. Then you just dab it into the panel lines, as you can see. It just makes everything pop just a little bit more. So now that wash has been applied, it's all got into the gaps. What we can do is, obviously there's quite a bit of excess, so we wet the end of the Q-tip with a bit of white spirit, and we just generally in the direction of the panel line. Sort of in the direction of airflow, it helps sort of simulate real sort of direction of airflow and grime. Just rub the cleaner bob, and then get the excess wash off of plane. There we go.
With any luck, after some time you should have some nice dark panel lines on your plane. The next thing we can do to make our plane look a bit more interesting would be some chipping. You can get chipping agents which allow you to paint some metal undercoat, add some fluid, then scratch off the areas with the fluid using a cocktail stick after they've been painted, but my preferred technique is just to get a cocktail stick with some silver paint on the end and dot it about areas which would often get handled, walked on or scratched, such as the walkways near the wing roots and around the gun bays. This can make the plane look a lot more lived in. Since you get in on the left hand side, the left hand wing root will be chipped more, so be a little more generous with the paint, but since you probably don't want this plane to look a complete wreck, I suggest you exercise at least a little restraint with this part. The final process we can do is using powders to weather the plane. You could use chalk dust or charcoal for this, but I've gone with some proper weathering powders from Revel, as you can see here.
You can use it to create effects such as rust or Schlangrün, Dunkelbraun, Sandgelb, Tiefschwarz, Schneeweb. Anyway, so you get 6 colours in here, which can be used to represent mud, black, brown, rust, white, yellow. And we're going to just use black for the most part, although we might mix a bit of brown or even rust in, potentially. Don't really need the others, because I don't think the Spitfire is going to find itself in snow, sand or mud. Although it is winter whilst I'm filming this. This is New Year's Eve at the moment.
With the dry brush, just brush on some black powder around the exhaust pipes, guns, cartridge ejectors and underside radiators to give the effect of smoke stains on this plane. I was quite liberal with this, especially on the underside, but you don't have to go as far. Avoid smudging the powder with your fingers as you seal it in with some satin or matte spray varnish. You can't use a brush here without smudging the powder, and once that's done, your weathering is complete. One final step, however, is to add an antenna wire, which I will do right now. I am personally very happy with this kit, and if you built it like I did, then you probably will be too. But really, you shouldn't hold yourself to someone else's standard in the beginning. Everyone improves with time, and you can't expect to make a masterpiece on your first try. I know that from my own experience. But hopefully, with the knowledge I have bestowed upon you, you might have been able to learn a little bit more about how to build a model kit. You might have just found a hobby that you will enjoy for many years to come. As for me, I am very happy with my weathering and paintwork. The decals did silver a bit in place, but for the most part the finish is perfect. The weathering might have been a bit intense for my liking, but that's alright because a real Spitfire would regularly get significantly dirtier, so this is frankly quite conservative. The kit was very well tooled as well, and I experienced little to no difficulty putting it together. Overall, I'm proud of what I have done. I aim to exercise a bit of restraint with fancy tools in order to make this video a bit more approachable to newcomers, but I've ended up creating what I think is one of my best kits in spite of it. I hope you found this video helpful, and until the next time, it's goodbye from me. See you around!